I've been sitting in my living room for hours, half-drunk coffee next to me, staring at the dark window, trying to make sense of something I didn't even know I'd need to make sense of. I'm 35, male, married for 6 years, together with my wife Elle for 9, and up until very recently, I thought life was normal. Not perfect, not straight out of a magazine, but steady. Comfortable enough that you feel like you have control, even if it's just a little. Elle is smart, magnetic, the kind of person who can walk into a room and have everyone laughing before they even realize why. That's why I fell for her so hard. Not just for her charm, but because she made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. I've been in enough relationships before this one to know when something is off, and yet, somehow, I never questioned her. She was consistent, funny, affectionate, and she had this uncanny ability to make the mundane feel alive. We had routines that were far from boring. Saturday mornings were pancakes that somehow always came out half-burned, terrible coffee debates, and dragging ourselves onto the couch to binge something ridiculous on Netflix. Weeknights were her cooking, me doing dishes while she danced around like she was on some reality cooking show. Friends were always over, parties, gatherings, dinners. And somehow, all of it just felt right. Warm, chaotic, normal. I trusted it. Sure, there were small things. Occasional disappearances, texts she didn't want me to see, minor inconsistencies in stories. Little things I could write off as human error, work stress, forgetfulness. Sometimes I caught her laughing at a message and putting her phone down too fast. Sometimes she'd be out longer than she said and come back with some plausible excuse. I ignored all of it. Not because I didn't notice, but because I wanted to believe the person I trusted completely wouldn't lie to me in a way that mattered. We had plans, real-life plans, buying a house, saving for trips, maybe kids eventually, furniture, vacations, all the little adult shit that feels like life. She was always excited, always in on it, planning spreadsheets for a trip or mapping out furniture in the living room. Looking back now, I see how much effort she put into making it all feel real, like the entire life we had was built on a foundation I thought was solid. I had no reason to suspect anything. And I think that's why what happened next hit like a punch to the gut. It wasn't intuition. It wasn't a text I stumbled on or some weird behavior I decided to investigate. It was just an ordinary Friday morning, the kind of start where you're thinking about coffee and traffic, not life-altering betrayals. I walked out to my car, keys in hand, yawning, thinking about how late I stayed up working the night before, how little sleep I got, and just living life in that numb, autopilot mode. And then I saw it, a small envelope tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper. Just sitting there, like it had been waiting for me. Like someone wanted me to see it. I remember thinking, who even leaves notes anymore? Before the words on the envelope hit me like a brick. There was no name, no handwriting I recognized immediately. Just, "Read me," scribbled on the front. And when I lifted it and opened it, my entire understanding of everything I thought I knew about my wife, about us, about my life, completely collapsed in seconds. Inside were details, very specific ones, about her interactions with another man, not vague flirting, not some silly text exchanges. Real, intimate, dangerous stuff. Things that happened in places I knew, in my apartment, even during times I was home. And the note said more than just that. It hinted that people I trusted, friends I thought I could count on, had known and helped cover for her. I can't even describe that first wave. It wasn't anger yet. It wasn't screaming or crying. It was a hollow, sinking feeling, like someone had just taken the floor out from under me and left me dangling in the void. My hands were shaking, my brain couldn't process, and I kept thinking, this has to be a mistake. Someone is fucking with me. But it wasn't. And the terrifying thing was that it was just the beginning. That envelope wasn't just a revelation. It was an invitation to watch my entire life unravel. Part 2. I didn't even know where to start, but I kept holding that little envelope like it was some kind of bomb that could go off in my hands. I sat on the curb next to my car, the air cool and damp from the morning, and just stared at it. I remember thinking, okay, maybe I should just throw it away. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe this is one of those prank things from the office. But the handwriting, the paper, the weight of it, it wasn't a joke. My chest was tight, like I'd swallowed a rock. I could feel my heart hammering and this weird, nauseous pressure in my stomach that made me want to throw up right there. Eventually, I opened it. I unfolded the letter carefully, like handling glass, and that's when I realized this wasn't just some random message or passive-aggressive threat. It was precise, specific, and terrifying. It named names, not all of them, but enough to make my blood run cold. My wife, Elle, and another man. A friend, someone I trusted, someone I'd hung out with countless times, drank beers with, laughed with, even shared personal stuff with. And the details were brutal. Times, places, what she supposedly said, the excuses she had given me while it happened. It wasn't vague. It wasn't, maybe this is suspicious. It was real. Concrete. And it wasn't the first time, apparently. I read the note over and over, trying to convince myself it was all a lie, that someone was messing with me. But each line pulled me deeper into disbelief. Then came the kicker, the note said, plain as day, that other people knew. My friends. People I trusted. People who had been in my apartment, had hugged me, had celebrated birthdays and milestones with me. They had helped cover for her, helped hide what she was doing. And the way it was written, like they were warning me but also almost gloating, it crushed me in a way I didn't even know was possible. I remember standing up, pacing around the parking lot, shaking, feeling like my chest might cave in. My brain kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it's outdated, maybe it's old drama, maybe she's changed, maybe it's a mistake. I even considered texting her immediately, confronting her right there, but I couldn't. Something in me knew that once I started asking questions, nothing would ever go back to normal. Nothing would ever be just another Friday morning. So I stayed in the car. I read and reread the note for hours. I memorized it. I replayed moments in my mind, moments that suddenly didn't make sense. The nights she said she was working late. The weekends she'd needed space. The trips I thought were work-related or friends-related. The sudden texts she deleted too fast for me to catch. I remembered sitting on the couch while she got a call and smiled in a way she didn't usually smile with me, and my stomach churned because, somehow, I had ignored it at the time. And it didn't stop there. The note hinted at more than just her actions. It suggested that my social circle was partially complicit, covering for her, keeping secrets, making sure I wouldn't catch her. I felt betrayed on every level. Not just by her. By people I had considered family, people I had laughed with, partied with, confided in. All of it suddenly felt like a lie. Like my entire life, the years I trusted, the milestones I celebrated, were built on a lie I didn't even see coming. I don't remember exactly how I got home after that. I just remember driving without direction, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Every turn, every red light, every familiar street suddenly felt alien. I kept picturing her smiling, texting, laughing, living a life I didn't know existed. And I hated myself for even thinking that maybe I had missed something obvious. Maybe I should have noticed. Maybe I wasn't enough. When I finally made it home, she wasn't there yet. Probably grabbing breakfast or running errands, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire reality had shifted in 10 minutes. I left the note on the kitchen counter where she wouldn't see it yet. I didn't want confrontation at that moment. I wanted space to breathe, to process, to understand how deep this went without making things explode. By the time she got back, I had retraced every conversation, every lie I now recognized as a lie. And I could feel my mind splitting between rage and disbelief. The first words that came out of my mouth were calm, too calm, like my body was running on autopilot. "We need to talk." And she smiled that smile, the one I used to love, and I almost felt the old pull, the trust, the warmth. Until I remembered the note. Until I remembered what she'd been doing behind my back. I didn't know at that moment how I was going to handle it. I didn't know if I could even handle it. I felt dizzy, hollow, like someone had scooped me out from the inside. And the thing that hurt the most? I realized just how long this had been happening, how methodical it must have been, how many people had helped cover for her. How little of what I thought was real actually was. And that's when it hit me, the rage, the betrayal, the absolute disbelief. I realized my life as I knew it was over. Not just the relationship, but my friendships, my sense of security, my understanding of trust. Everything I thought I built was a fragile illusion, and that little note under the windshield wiper had shredded it in seconds. Part 3. I thought the first note had broken me, but apparently, the universe wasn't done yet. A few days after that first envelope, I came home from work around 7:30 p.m., still reeling, still replaying every interaction, every laugh, every hug. I wasn't expecting anything, just hoping maybe the first note was some sick joke, some cruel prank from someone with too much time on their hands. But then I saw it. Another envelope. Smaller, heavier this time, taped under the windshield wiper like someone knew I'd look there first thing. My hands were shaking before I even touched it. I swear, I could feel the weight of it physically pressing down on me, and I already knew that nothing inside would make me feel better. I tore it open, trying to do it fast, like ripping off a band-aid, and inside were photos. Clear, sharp, undeniable. My wife, Elle, at a hotel. Not some blurry tourist photo, not a weird social media screenshot. Full-on photos, her and a man I recognized immediately. They were in the lobby, laughing, sitting at the hotel bar, holding hands, walking into elevators together. They weren't hiding. They were comfortable. Familiar. Happy. Comfortable in the kind of intimacy that made my stomach twist in ways I didn't know I could feel. The photos had timestamps. They matched dates when she had said she was at work late, or on some girls' night out. They overlapped with trips I thought were solo work conferences. I can't even describe the wave of nausea that hit me, the mix of rage and disbelief. And then the sickening realization that someone had been keeping tabs on her for me, like someone wanted me to know, or like someone was messing with me, I don't know which. I flipped through the photos again, my mind reeling, my chest tightening. I could feel the old trust and the old warmth with her just evaporate like it had never existed. And then, at the bottom of the envelope, taped underneath, a small handwritten note. You should have known. Everyone knew. Enjoy figuring it out. The words blurred as my vision got hot, my hands shaking, my brain doing that thing where it tries to shut down to protect itself. Everyone knew. Who? How long? The first note had hinted at friends covering for her, but now, photos, timestamps, a second note, it wasn't just her, it wasn't just a fling. It was a network. Someone had been watching, documenting, and making sure I couldn't miss it. And part of me was furious, like I wanted to hunt down whoever sent these, whoever dared to invade my life this way, and another part was collapsing inside, realizing that my wife was living a completely separate reality while I was sitting in ours, thinking we were normal. I wanted to confront her immediately. I wanted to throw the photos at her, demand answers, scream. But the thing is, I also didn't want to react like an animal. I wanted to be controlled, rational, even though my entire body was shaking, my hands were numb, my heart was pounding like I'd run a marathon. I set the envelope on the kitchen counter and paced, trying to calm down, trying to think. When she walked in a half hour later, all casual, hair messy from work, bag slung over her shoulder, I could feel my blood boil. My mind ran through every question, every accusation, every scenario. And somehow, she was smiling at me, like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't just been photographed doing things I never thought she would, things I didn't want to believe. I didn't speak right away. I just stood there, chest tight, shaking slightly, trying to figure out if I could even breathe without crying or throwing up. She noticed the envelope on the counter immediately and froze for a split second, just a flicker, then smiled that damn smile, the one that used to make me melt, and said, "What's that?" And that's when the gaslighting started. She laughed softly, like I'd misunderstood, like I was reading the wrong situation. Photos? Seriously? What are you talking about? Lying about work? That's insane, babe. Why would anyone even do that? Her tone was calm, playful almost, like she was walking me back from some paranoid edge I'd invented myself. She swore up and down that it was nothing, that the pictures were old, that the man was a friend from work I hadn't seen in years, that she'd never do anything like that again. And here's the worst part, for a moment, just a fleeting, horrifying second, I almost believed her. My brain tried so hard to rationalize it. Maybe it's some misunderstanding, maybe someone was messing with me, maybe she really wasn't lying, maybe she really did forget to tell me something harmless. That split second where I thought maybe I'd overreacted made me feel like I was losing my mind, like I'd become one of those paranoid idiots in a bad movie. But the envelope, the note, the timestamps, the obvious intimacy in the photos, none of it added up to nothing. And deep down, I knew it. I knew the trust we had was gone. I knew she had been living a hidden life. And worst of all, I realized that even if she was apologetic now, even if she promised to never do it again, the lie had already embedded itself into everything I felt, every memory I had of her, every moment I thought was ours. And that's when I started thinking about the first note again, the one that hinted my friends knew. The one that suggested someone was covering for her. I realized just how isolated I was. How little of the life I thought I had was actually real. How many people had helped hide this from me, and how long it had been going on. By the time I went to bed that night, I felt hollow. Angry. Sick. Violated in a way I didn't even have words for. And I realized that confrontation was inevitable. I had to talk to her. I had to demand answers. But the thought of doing it, of facing her calm, manipulative explanations, of listening to the excuses, was terrifying. And I didn't yet know that the worst part wasn't the affair itself. The worst part was realizing how many people had helped hide it, and how expertly she could make me doubt myself even while the evidence was right in front of me. Part 4. I wish I could say that confronting her was clean, like in the movies, where you scream and storm out and your life suddenly clicks into some resolution. But it wasn't like that at all. It was worse. It was messy. It was slow, like my reality was being shredded one careful, measured step at a time, and she knew exactly how to make me question everything, including my own mind. I waited until we were both home, lights dim, quiet apartment, and I laid it all out. The envelopes. The notes. The photos. Every detail that had ruined my mornings, my workdays, my nights. I put them on the table and I just stared. I don't even remember exactly what I said first because my throat was tight, my hands shaking, but it was along the lines of, "What the fuck is this? Explain this. How long?" And she did what she's always done best, smiled. That fucking smile that used to make me feel safe, warm, loved. And she laughed softly, almost a little, like I was overreacting, like I'd just caught myself imagining things. "Babe," she said, calm, measured, so controlled it made me want to punch something, "you're letting this get to you way too much. Those photos? They don't mean anything. The guy is just a friend. I swear. You're reading too much into it. Everyone does stuff you don't see. You can't just assume the worst about me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the envelopes at her, throw the photos at her face, demand she confess, demand she beg for forgiveness, demand she admit she lied for months or years. But she kept that calm tone, kept that smile, kept leaning in slightly, soft voice like she was coaxing me down from some irrational edge. She said she understood why I might be upset, but then gently suggested I might be imagining things, stressed, paranoid. And suddenly, all my rage got tangled with doubt. For a horrifying second, I actually started to think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I had misinterpreted the photos. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was becoming the crazy, obsessive husband in one of those clickbait posts online. And I hated myself for even considering it. I hated myself because I wanted to trust her, and my brain was literally trying to rewrite all the evidence I had right in front of me. Then she threw in the little half-apology, half-excuse, the thing that almost broke me. I messed up in ways I haven't told you yet, sure, but I was never planning to hurt you. You know I love you, right? You've got to trust that. And I could feel my defenses wobble, my brain doing that split-second flip where I want to believe her, because part of me wants life to go back to normal, wants her to be the woman I thought she was, wants our home to still be safe. And here's the worst part, I caught it. I caught that she was manipulating me in real time, and it still almost worked. I could feel the adrenaline, the rage, the betrayal pushing against the doubt, and it was like being torn in two directions at once. My stomach was twisting, my head pounding, and the world felt unsteady under my feet. I realized that it wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the lies. It was the control. The way she could plant seeds of doubt, make me question my own perception, make me feel like maybe, somehow, I was losing it. She knew exactly what to say to keep me on the edge. And part of me still loved her in those moments, hated that I did, hated myself for even feeling it. Because love doesn't fix betrayal. Love doesn't undo lies. Love doesn't make people stop covering for someone you trusted for years. But for a terrifying moment, I almost let it. Almost let her coax me into believing her version, almost let her gaslight me into forgetting the evidence. I couldn't. I couldn't let her win. Not that moment. Not that day. I finally forced myself to step back, gather the envelopes and photos, and tell her I needed space. That I needed time to process, to think, to understand what the hell I was supposed to do with my life after realizing the woman I married had been living this secret life under my nose, and that my friends had helped cover it up. Walking out, leaving her in the apartment, I felt hollow. I felt everything simultaneously: rage, grief, disgust, disbelief, shame. I felt like my brain had betrayed me by almost believing her. I felt like every memory, every laugh, every touch, every mundane day we'd shared had been a part of a carefully constructed lie. I felt stupid, naive, disposable. And I hated myself for letting it hurt this much. I started replaying every conversation we'd had, trying to figure out what was real and what had been manipulation. That night, I barely slept. I stayed up pacing, sometimes screaming into pillows, sometimes staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my hands shaking. Every memory twisted in my mind, like I was looking at life through a cracked mirror and realizing everything I loved had been fractured behind me for years. I realized I couldn't trust her, couldn't trust anyone around me, and couldn't even fully trust my own judgment. I was living in a world that had been rewritten without my permission, and it was terrifying. I felt alone in the truest sense, isolated in my own home, in my own mind, knowing that the betrayal wasn't just hers, it was a conspiracy of silence from people I thought I could count on. By the time dawn broke, I'd made a decision. I didn't know exactly how, or when, or what the consequences would be, but I knew I had to reclaim control. I had to set boundaries, protect myself, or I'd lose everything: my sanity, my identity, my sense of safety. I realized that staying would mean endless manipulation, constant doubt, and a life that never felt real again. And so I decided, confrontation wasn't enough. Evidence wasn't enough. Words weren't enough. Action had to follow. Part 5. The end. I left that morning. Not with a dramatic slam of the door, not with shouting, not with some movie-style declaration that the world would notice. I just walked out. Car keys in my pocket, evidence in my backpack, and a heart so heavy I couldn't breathe right. I went to a cheap motel on the edge of town, somewhere I knew no one would look for me, somewhere I could sit in silence and let the storm inside my head rage without interruption. I spent that first day there just staring at the ceiling, letting the photos, the notes, the evidence, all the little pieces of a life I thought I knew, spin around in my head. I tried to make sense of it, tried to rationalize why she did it, why people helped hide it, why no one had ever said a word to me. But there were no answers that made sense. There was just this raw, gnawing realization that the person I loved, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, had been living a secret life, manipulating everyone around me, and letting me remain blissfully ignorant. The rage came first. Pure, primal, boiling rage. I wanted to break something. I wanted to call every friend I had ever trusted and scream into their faces. I wanted to confront her, demand justice, demand confessions, demand apologies that would never feel enough. But I didn't. Because part of me, somewhere deep, knew that confrontation wouldn't fix anything. Confrontation would just give her one more chance to manipulate me, to twist reality, to make me question my sanity again. I had almost fallen for it the first time. I wasn't going to fall for it again. The second wave was grief. Real grief. Not just for the betrayal, not just for the trust lost, but for the life I thought I had. For all the years, all the milestones, all the memories that now felt tainted, hollow, like someone had painted over my world with lies. I grieved for the man I thought I was, for the normal life I thought I had, for the love I thought was safe and real. Grief that made my chest ache, my stomach churn, my hands shake. Grief that made me feel old and exhausted in a way I never had before. Then came clarity. Slow, painful, but steady. I realized that leaving wasn't just an option. It wasn't even a choice. It was the only sane thing I could do to protect myself, to reclaim my life, to rebuild a foundation that hadn't been poisoned by lies. Boundaries weren't enough. Trust couldn't be rebuilt after years of deliberate manipulation, secrecy, and betrayal. I knew it. My gut knew it. My heart knew it, even as it bled. I moved my life out of that apartment within the week. I didn't confront her again. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I packed what I could carry, left the rest behind, and made my way to a small apartment I could afford on my own. I cut contact with her for months. I stopped answering calls from friends who might have known. I deleted accounts, blocked numbers, and shut down every channel where someone could manipulate or gaslight me further. I wanted silence. I wanted safety. I wanted to breathe without the weight of her lies pressing down on me. Months later, after therapy, after long walks, after nights of insomnia and panic that slowly ebbed, I finally got the explanation I hadn't even dared to hope for. Her sister reached out. Not directly at first, an anonymous message on a secure email, and then eventually, with a long, painful confession. She had left the notes under my car, sent the photos, because she couldn't take being complicit anymore. She had hated what her sister was doing for years but had been trapped by fear, loyalty, and the sense that no one could be trusted. She said she waited until I had the chance to leave safely, until she was sure her sister couldn't manipulate me into staying, before revealing herself. I don't even know how to process that. Relief, maybe. Validation that it wasn't my imagination, that I hadn't overreacted, that someone had been trying to warn me. But also anger, because she had been part of the chain of secrets, part of the silence that let this happen for so long. Mixed emotions that leave me exhausted, every single time I think about it. The months after were hard. Therapy helped, sometimes. Friends helped, the ones I trusted fully now, the ones who never lied or covered for anyone. Work helped, routine helped. I started rebuilding, piece by piece, small victories. I remembered how to trust myself again, remembered that my gut was right, remembered that I was allowed to walk away from the people who poisoned my life. I still feel the sting when I pass the places we used to go, when I see friends I lost in the wake of this, when I hear her name. But I'm alive. I'm safe. I'm me again. And I think the hardest part, the part that keeps me up some nights, isn't that she lied, isn't even that she betrayed me, isn't that friends and family kept secrets. The hardest part is realizing how easily I almost believed her excuses, how easily I almost let her manipulate me into staying, how much she underestimated my ability to survive the truth. So, Reddit, was I overreacting? Was leaving the only sane choice? Am I wrong for walking away from someone I loved but who destroyed everything I thought was real? I keep replaying every decision, wondering if I could have handled it differently, if there was a way to salvage anything, but I can't find one. I don't want to find one. I just want my life back.